Mike Farrell is an actor, a political activist, active citizen. Just recently wrote a book called Just Call Me Mike, which is the story of a journey from an actor to an activist, and that's what our interview is about. Thanks for joining us, Mike.
Sure, happy to be with you.
So, you've had one of the more successful careers in television, movies, and you have a history of sticking your neck out. So go back to what forms you as someone who sticks their neck out when a lot of people here don't.
I think during the book I kind of did a lot of introspection and kind of came up with an understanding of something that I hadn't really put together before. I was raised in an Irish Catholic working class family, and unfortunately, typically my father was a two-fisted, hard-drinking, tough guy who didn't know how to express himself emotionally, and so he was good at expressing himself physically. Not an abusive man in the sense we think of it today, but nonetheless, there was a lot of fear around being out of his way. That experience as a child brought me to a place where I became very aware subconsciously of what I call the disequilibrium of power. People who have power, who abuse their ability to control other
that
people.
Often when people come to that realization leads them to want power.
I guess, yeah.
Not to fight it, usually,
Yeah.
especially if you're doing all right.
It's interesting. In my case, you know, I came up just trying to please, trying to figure out who I was, trying to figure out if I was, on some levels, trying to get my dad's approval so that he wouldn't stop treating me as though I was the stupidest, most clumsy, most worthless person around. And he died when I was a teenager. I was 17. So it creates some problem. You continue to try to find approval from the person who's not there anymore. It's very difficult. So one of the things I did was join the Marines. And because, you know, I figured the Marine Corps builds men, maybe they'd build me one.
What year?
1957, right after I got out of high school. And
So 1957 is still pretty much in the midst of Cold War psychology. You and I are more or less contemporaries, so you're a little older than I am. But the idea that we were perhaps headed into a nuclear war, that we were living at times where none of us thought we would really grow up, but you joined the Marines.
yeah. Well, it was, you know, I was enchanted. John Wayne and my father had a lot, in my mind, a lot of connections. So I was enchanted by the movies where the Duke, you know, led us up Mount Suribachi. And first of all, I was going to be drafted. Working class family, the college wasn't on the agenda. The next thing was going to happen was the Army was going to grab me, and the Marines seemed more somehow glamorous, more meaningful, more macho to me. So I joined, and I had an experience in the Marines that I think of as one of the formative ones. Having grown up on the West Coast here, I was aware of prejudice. My father talked about niggers and spics and hebes and all that stuff, you know. But he also had friends who were Jewish and I don't know of any friends who were black, but so there was a kind of a confusion.
What city are we in?
Here, Los Angeles.
Oh, you grew up in
Yeah,
LA.
I grew up in West Hollywood, actually, before it was a city. I was stationed in Japan for a while, and I met a guy, and we went out on Liberty together, and we had a good time. We came back to the barracks, and when we came in, there was this tension. And at first, I was stupid. I couldn't figure out what it was about, and then I realized it's because he was black and I was white, and never the twain should meet, you know.
Well, back up a step here now.
Yeah.
Now, your father is using all this language and has all
Yeah,
kinds
yeah.
of racial prejudices,
Yeah.
but you didn't? And if not, why not?
I was too busy, I think, trying to figure out who I was, trying to figure out if I was worth anything, to be putting down other people. I had friends in school where I grew up in West Hollywood. At that time, there's a not huge, but relatively large Mexican-American community, and they were friends of mine, and good guys, you know, and nice girls. And it was confusing to me. My group formed a club, and it became a club. Their group formed a club, and it became a gang, you know, in the parlance. So I just was sort of coming up in a time where I was very confused about a lot of things, but my focus was very personal, very much on myself, very much on figuring out who the hell I was and how I was going to get away with it.
So in terms of where you're at in your political understanding, you're living at a day where I believe on television, there's a television show called I Was a Commie for the FBI.
That's right. Yes.
I know me, and I suppose you were, when you went to school, were probably learning how to hide under your desk,
That's right.
getting ready
Drop.
for the drop.
Yep.
Joining the Marines, are you joining something at that time you believe is fighting for truth, justice, and the American way? To
Absolutely.
quote Superman?
Absolutely. I was going to be a big, tough American defending Marine. And I went through, all the training and survived and strutted around in my uniform and felt like I was tougher than anybody, except inside was a cowering fool, trying to figure it out. So when the thing happened...
That might have qualified you to be president, but we don't need to go there right now.
Oh, God, yes. So anyway, when I met Tyus, this buddy of mine, I had met other guys in the service from all walks of life, but he and I really connected. And then he shipped out, and I connected with another guy, incidentally, a white guy from Louisiana. And when I got out of the service, looking for what to do, I got a job involving driving across the country, driving a car across the country, delivering a car. And I went down through Arkansas and Louisiana and Mississippi and Alabama and Georgia, and I saw things that were shocking to me because I was still in the head place of a guy who thought America was, truth, justice, and the American way. And I saw black-only drinking fountains and black-only restrooms, and I saw the extraordinary poverty, and it just really kind of came home to me that this pal of mine and I wouldn't only create tension in the barracks, he couldn't be with me. He couldn't drive in the car with me, he couldn't stop and eat in a restaurant with me, he couldn't stay in a motel or wherever I stayed. And it was one of those lights that starts to go off, I came back, I hitchhiked actually back once I delivered the car and stopped to see this buddy of mine in New Orleans. And he was a good guy, he was a pal of mine, and we were talking about stuff, and I was only kind of beginning to be aware of what was going on in the world. And I raised some questions, and he said, he and his buddies would go out during Mardi Gras on a truck, and they would wrap up bricks in gift wrapping and drive through the black communities and throw the bricks out for people who were, and I thought, I can't believe what I'm hearing, and this is my friend. I was stunned, and it helped open my mind a little bit more to what was actually going on in the world and how people justified what they did and what their relationships were and where they were in society and how they maintained where they were in society. So, this is the beginning then I got out of the Marines in 58 or 59, so in 60, 61, 62, Kennedy's assassinated in 63, the Vietnam War, all the revolutions started to happen, and I was in the middle of it, trying to figure out how to make sense out of things.
Please join us for the next segment of our interview with Mike Farrell.
Donate today and receive a new documentary film available to members of the REALnews network. The History of the National Security State with legendary author Gore Vidal. Bonus features of the DVD include an in-depth response to Vidal from ex-CIA analyst Ray McGovern, who served under 7 U.S. presidents, an exclusive interview with Colin Powell's former Chief of Staff Larry Wilkerson, and an insightful interview with oil policy analyst Antonia Juhas.
The news magazine of the screen. Living glimpses of history in the making.
Hollywood and Washington is a symbiotic relationship. They both deal with illusions. Reality doesn't often play much of a part. I think I saw through the myth of the Cold War almost from the beginning. I was a Washington political kid from a political family. Roosevelt first had radio because he had this great speaking voice and everyone liked to hear. Truman proceeded to break every arrangement that Roosevelt had set up for a peaceful coexistence. And Truman thought that it would be a good idea. Why not just stay armed all the time? And then he devised the national security state. You've got to go up and swear allegiance to the United States or else you're a commie. I mean, we had imported fascism. We get Dwight Eisenhower, who said that we have this great military industrial complex. It is a dangerous thing. And he said this is going to change everything. And the way our country is governed is going to change us politically. Along comes Jack Kennedy, who wanted to make his mark, believed in the Cold War. But he said in this kind of politics, it is the appearance of things that matters. I think everybody should take a sober look at the world about us. The national security state still exists, only it isn't communism anymore, it's terrorism. This is the most serious thing that has happened in the history of the United States. Knowledge is power. We need an honest news system.
We need the real news.
This is the sort of thing we can build right now without anyone else's permission from the government or from the business community. It's the power's in our hands.
If we're not going to sleepwalk into more wars, we think we need to start with a television news network that won't bow to pressure and has the courage to seek facts. And that means independent economics. And that's why we need you.
Make a tax-deductible donation now of at least $10 a month or a one-time give of at least $75. As a thank you for your support, we will send you the new documentary film, The History of the National Security State.